Hi, everyone. I'm Vladimir Dutip. We are watching all the news happening in the United States and around the world. Check out these monitors behind me. If you don't know by now, folks, these are stations and affiliates, CBS News all across the country. If there is news breaking out there, we're going to bring it to you live right here in Studio 55. Let's begin. It's down to the wire. Congress appears to have a budget bill, but will lawmakers get it passed in time to avoid a government shutdown? The man accused of killing the United Healthcare CEO is facing first-degree murder charges in New York. New details about how police say he carried out the shootings and their efforts to bring him back to the state. And extended stay in space. The two Starliner astronauts stranded on the ISS will need to remain in orbit even longer. We'll explain why. This is CBS News 24/7. We begin this morning on Capitol Hill, where the deadline to avert a potential government shutdown is looming. Last night, a spending package to keep the lights on through early next year was finally released. Now it will need to get through Congress before reaching President Biden's desk. CBS News political reporter Torian Small is live on Capitol Hill, and he joins me now to discuss. All right, so what's in this package, Torian?
Vlad, quite a bit. I think a lot of Republicans especially are none too happy with the idea that some unrelated riders like extensions for health programs as well as rule changes favorable to the ethanol industry are being tacked onto this. But the top line and really what has been a sticking point for the past couple of weeks is emergency aid assistance. Just to remind you, President Joe Biden requested from Congress about $100 billion in aid relief that will really focus on recovery efforts from Hurricane Helene and Milton. But we also see that about $10 billion for the ag industry and emergency assistance will also be included there. And just to walk you back a little bit further on that, the reason why farmers have a vested interest in this is because Congress failed to pass or reauthorize the 2018 Farm Bill. They did an extension through 2023. That expired in September of this year. This omnibus or this bill would include an extension through September 2025. So quite a lot to sift through here, but it seems like both sides at least seem to be happy, and this could be making it to the floor somewhat soon.
Torian, let me ask you about tech billionaire Elon Musk. How is he factoring into a role in all of this?
Well, Vlad, he's one of the people not too happy. He posted a picture of this stopgap spending measure and called it pork. He then posted on Twitter or X saying that it shall not pass. Speaker Mike Johnson was asked about this. They're friends, by the way. He was asked about this on Fox and Friends this morning. He said he talked to him and told him, listen, he doesn't like the spending bill either, but it's something that has to pass. This is just a must-pass measure, considering we have until Friday before the government partially shuts down. The interesting, I think, detail of this is Elon Musk now has the president's ear. Though he might not be as effective in shuttling or stymieing the progress of this bill moving forward under a new Congress, whether or not this will impact Johnson's ability to lead the House conference here, whether or not it will be instructive as to where President Trump will look for legislative agendas moving forward, might be something worth watching.
Billionaires attempting to influence Congress. Never heard of it. All right, Torian, thank you very much. Appreciate it, my friend. Israel and Hamas could be closing in on a ceasefire deal. This comes as the IDF ordered fresh evacuations in central Gaza today ahead of a new offensive. Meanwhile, CIA Director William Burns is reportedly heading to Qatar, where he's expected to hold talks with the country's prime minister on the latest efforts to secure that ceasefire and a hostage release deal. For more on this, we're joined by CBS News foreign correspondent Chris Livesay. He joins me now to discuss. Chris, so what are you hearing about this potential possibility of a ceasefire?
Well, it's an old song, right, Vlad? We've heard it over and over again that we're getting closer, and then nothing happens. But there do appear to be promising signs that this time might be the one. For instance, John Kirby, White House spokesman, says they are cautiously optimistic. Another reason, a Hamas source told the Washington Post that Hamas is giving up its demand for the IDF to end the war first and to completely pull out of the Strip before any kind of deal could be made. So that was a huge sticking point that apparently is no longer there. And then finally, the Israeli defense minister said that this is the closest Israel and Hamas and all the parties involved have been since they last reached a deal more than a year ago, which led to the release of more than 100 hostages in exchange for Palestinian prisoners. So we spoke to some other people about this up close, some of the family members of the hostages who have been waiting for more than a year since October 7th of 2023. The father of two hostages, two brothers who are being held together, said he'll basically believe it when I see it. He said, I'll believe it when I see them walking across the border back into Israel.
And so then begs the question, Chris, what kind of political pressure, both internally and externally from the United States, for example, is Prime Minister Netanyahu under to get this deal done?
He's under a lot, but perhaps the biggest change has been since the election of Donald Trump. In fact, the president-elect has said several times now that there will be, quote, hell to pay if the hostages aren't released by the time of Donald Trump's inauguration. Also, there are domestic pressures in Israel. About 80% of Israelis say they want to see a deal. And now is also a really good time for Benjamin Netanyahu because for the first time in a long time, he actually has enough support in his coalition to survive if some of the more radical elements of his coalition walk out. There have been some hardliners who have been against the deal from the beginning, and previously they'd threatened to leave, and if they did, then his government would have toppled. But now that's no longer the case. Even if some of these elements decide they're going to leave, he could survive that. So it seems like all these things are lining up in favor for Benjamin Netanyahu politically.
All right, Chris Livesay for us. We appreciate it, Chris. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Vlad.
All right, Russia says a suspect has been detained in the killing of a top general in Moscow. Officials say the suspect is a citizen of Uzbekistan and was recruited by Ukrainian intelligence officials. That agency has taken responsible for the killing. Russia says the suspect confessed to planting the bomb in a scooter that killed the top lieutenant general and his assistant on Tuesday. The man accused of killing the United Healthcare CEO is now charged with first-degree murder as an act of terrorism. The Manhattan DA said Luigi Mangione intended to cause shock, attention, and intimidation with what he called the frightening and well-planned murder of Brian Thompson. He could be heading back to New York as soon as this week. Joining me now in Studio 55 is CBS News correspondent Lilia Luciano, who's been following this story from the very beginning. Good to see you here.
Good to be here, Vlad. Thank you.
What did we learn yesterday, Lilia?
We learned a lot. We were expecting up until yesterday that he would be facing second-degree murder charges in New York, which here in New York, second degree is what you would expect in a different state where there is evidence of premeditation. But in New York, and I asked the DA just to clarify that yesterday at that press conference, what's the difference and why is it so rare for his office, the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, to charge someone with first-degree murder? He said those are charges that are usually reserved for people who kill police officers, for serial killers. And this time around, they're using a statute which had not been used a whole lot before of terrorism. Somebody who was acting or who they believe was committing a terrorist act in their crime. I talked to our legal contributor, Ricky Kleeman, and she said, you know, that's very creative. That's rare to see. So what they're looking to do, it seems, is to make sure that if he is sentenced, or if he's convicted and then sentenced, that he would be facing up to life without the possibility of parole. You could face up to life with a second-degree charge, murder charge, but with the first, it's more like they ensure that he's not going to have that possibility of parole. We know from the CNN interview that the attorney that he has hired to represent him in New York, that there is a possibility, given what this attorney said before she was retained, before she was hired, that they could be considering, his defense team could be considering a not guilty because of insanity, by way of insanity, in his defense. If that happens, I also learned from Ricky Kleeman that in other states, the it is the burden of the state to prove that you are not criminally insane. In New York, it is the burden of the defense to prove that you are.
Right.
So it's a very high bar.
And I do wonder if by adding or elevating this charge that they're not perhaps potentially giving him an opportunity, the shooter, the suspect, to walk away from this. Because when you overcharge, you tend to see that.
We've seen that happen.
Yeah.
We've seen, I mean, I covered the Casey Anthony trial in Florida.
That's a perfect example.
Every legal expert I talked to back then talked about how, there was never direct evidence or like that charging her with first-degree murder was too high a bar.
Yep.
And that is exactly what I asked Ricky yesterday.
Yeah.
I said, aren't they just raising the bar for themselves too high, given the amount of support that there is, the difficulty that you're going to find in New York to have a jury that is going to want to sentence this man to life without the possibility of parole, and now you're saying terrorism. So it is going to be a very difficult case, despite, it could be despite the mountain of evidence, because there's a lot of
mountain of evidence is exactly the words that his now attorney used when she was on CNN in a capacity as a legal commentator.
Exactly.
So very interesting. All right, Lilia, always great to have you in studio.
I'm
I know
on my
you
way to
will.
Altoona because he has a hearing tomorrow, so
He
I'll be
does
reporting
here in
from
New
there
York,
tomorrow
in
Pennsylvania.
in Altoona, Pennsylvania, because he's still out there waiting to get extradited here.
Right.
Lilia, thank you as always, my friend. Appreciate it. Okay, evacuation orders are in effect for parts of Southern California as fierce winds fuel a brush fire in Jurupa Valley. That is the newly named Soto Fire, which erupted last night and quickly spread to ignite dozens of acres. The blaze comes as much of Southern California is under red flag warnings with the potential for fire danger. CBS News Los Angeles is on the ground with the very latest. They are covering it live. Let's look.
Valley. And Britt, people there saw just how fast a fire can spread under these conditions.
Yeah, Jamie, and this one is a smaller fire, but still very threatening to this neighborhood. We have fire crews still here, but just over there, we want to show you also where the neighborhood is under evacuation this morning. That is just east of Camino Real, south of Jurupa, right off the 60 freeway here. Those homes under that order. Let's show you video for what it looked like last night when this fire started. Big flames moving up this mountainside. This was just before 8 o'clock last night when this happened. A lot of families were sitting down having dinner when they heard the fire start burning up the mountainside. This is just off Soto Street and Sedona Drive in Jurupa Valley where the fire started. Fire crews from Riverside County rushed in and began to keep the fire at bay, protecting homes, protecting neighbors. Evacuations were ordered for homes in the surrounding area. Right now, the evacuation order is for a few dozen homes. It appears along Laurel Ridge Road, Camino Real, Lakeside Drive, and Rock Ridge Road this morning. One family talked with us about just how scary it was for them to see the flames so close to their home.
It was horrible. I jump out of bed, check outside, see all that, get very scared. I run out of my room, yell to my mom and my dad, and I say, "Hey, the entire hill is on fire outside."
Yeah, for these families to see that, I mean, it was quite frightening. Right now, though, we know no homes have been damaged or destroyed, which is certainly good news. There is more than a dozen firefighters that are still out here, hand crews that are trying to dig that containment line. Right now, it is 20% contained, 30 acres burned, and the winds are relatively light, which is good news for those fire crews. That is the latest here in Jurupa Valley. Let's go over to the shoreline.
All right, you've been watching our sister network, CBS Los Angeles, covering those fires out there. So let's bring in CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Kate Bilo with a look at the national forecast for us. Hi, Kate.
Good morning to you, Vlad. Yeah, we're continuing to monitor those critical fire weather conditions in California. You just heard of that new fire that has cropped up. We're still seeing crews battling the Franklin fire, which has not grown in size, but is still only less than 80% contained. And we are going to see another round of those very strong Santa Ana winds really picking up today. So you can see right now our fire weather outlook. You can see we're looking at that Franklin fire, where it is located right in that critical area where you see kind of the pink shading there. That is critical fire weather right around the Santa Clarita area, Ventura, and down through the Los Angeles area. Elevated fire danger today. This is mainly because of those strong Santa Ana winds. You can see how the gusts just kind of speed up as they downslope through the valleys. The valleys are narrow, the wind's going downhill. That causes them to really accelerate. So a few spots going to see gusts over 30, maybe even 40 or 50 miles per hour, coupled with very low relative humidity through the remainder of today. And that fire danger will remain very high. Elsewhere across the nation, we've got a front moving through portions of the Midwest this morning. This is producing some locally heavy downpours, and that will move into the major Northeast cities just in time for the evening commute, followed by a blast of cold for the weekend. We'll talk more about that frigid start to winter coming up in just a bit. Vlad, I'll send it back to you.
All right, Kate, thank you very much. President-elect Donald Trump is meeting with yet another tech mogul today. What to know about Jeff Bezos' upcoming visit to Mar-a-Lago. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. The community of Madison, Wisconsin is still searching for answers after Monday's deadly school shooting that killed a teacher and a student. Police now say it was a second-grade teacher, not a student, who first called 911 to report an active shooter. Police are trying to pinpoint what drove the 15-year-old shooter to carry out that shooting, but they say it's a combination of factors. CBS News correspondent Ian Lee is in Madison and joins me now to discuss this. Ian, what are we learning about this possible motive? I think the community is still trying to get answers.
Yeah, Vlad, that is something that the police say is their top priority. They're talking to people who knew Natalie. They're also looking at her social media, trying to really figure out what could drive this young woman to commit this act. Also looking at her family life, anything in there that could give those details about what could trigger this. But the police aren't giving us any details. They say this investigation is ongoing, and they've been pretty tight-lipped about that motive.
So how's the community reacting and trying to recover, Ian?
You know, it's a slow process. Parents that we've spoken with say that, they're okay with their kids going back to school when it opens up in the new year. But we have seen these vigils that have been playing out, people wondering how this could happen, if their kids are safe. The community is also offering services and support to people, mental health support, so to give them kind of what they need to get through this tough time, Vlad.
All right, Ian Lee for us this morning. Ian, thank you very much. All eyes are on Mar-a-Lago this morning, where Amazon founder Jeff Bezos is headed for a one-on-one with the president-elect. It comes after the online retail giant announced a $1 million donation to Donald Trump's inauguration fund. The event will be streamed live on Amazon Prime. CBS News correspondent Caitlin Huey-Burns joins us live now from West Palm Beach, Florida. These two have had a complicated relationship in the past, Caitlin, as you know. What are the expectations for this meeting?
Yeah, exactly right, Vlad. Complicated to say the least. They have both been very critical of one another over the past 8 years. Remember, Bezos is not only the founder of Amazon, he also owns the Washington Post. And so Trump has been very critical of Bezos over the years. But after his election, we have seen that these CEOs have been flocking to Mar-a-Lago and coming to West Palm Beach to meet with the president-elect. And notably, this also comes as we're talking about all these, tech CEOs coming to talk to Donald Trump. It's also important to note, the media line item here, too, given that Bezos owns the Post. You may remember the controversy right before the election when the Washington Post decided not to endorse a candidate. There was lots of criticism of Bezos' role in that decision. And so this also comes as, ABC has agreed to a $15 million settlement. Just yesterday, the president-elect filed suit against Ann Selzer and the Des Moines Register for a poll they put out before the election. And so that kind of hovers over all of this. But you mentioned that donation from Bezos, from Amazon and other companies to the inauguration fund. And what the Trump team is trying to kind of convey here is that they are attracting, in their view, lots of interest from businesses. It was notable, actually, at the press conference on Monday. Trump said, 8 years ago, nobody liked me, and now all of a sudden everybody's coming, coming to talk to me. And so maybe something has changed, he kind of joked. But I think that's a major storyline kind of heading into his administration.
All right, let me ask you about something else, Caitlin, and that is RFK Jr. That is the president-elect's pick for a health secretary. He's still on the Hill. How have his conversations with lawmakers been going?
That's right. I mean, the most controversial positions that Kennedy has had have to do with vaccines, which you and I have talked about all week since he is on the Hill meeting with senators. And of course, President-elect Donald Trump's comments about, wanting to obviously protect the polio vaccine in his words, but also saying that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. could go and do a report about other vaccines. So that's kind of hovering over all of this. But it's really interesting, Vlad, that you're seeing a real deference from Republican senators to Donald Trump and his picks. Arguing, as Trump has, that the president-elect does have a mandate from the American people. And so you're seeing that kind of hover over their decision-making in terms of whether they're going to support him. Not only, does he have controversial views on vaccines, but there's also questions about his views on abortion and also, how he would handle food production, which could actually, be a line of concern for those lawmakers from, big farming states. So that's kind of at center stage here. But by and large, we're seeing with Kennedy and other picks that Republicans are willing and ready to come to Donald Trump's defense in terms of, going along with a lot of these picks, however controversial they may be.
Indeed. All right, Caitlin Huey-Burns for us this morning. Thanks, Caitlin. Switching gears now, there is just 1 week left to shop for Christmas. It's likely that some of you are completely ready, while others have not even started. Why are some people planners and others procrastinators? That's a good question. Let's not waste any more time getting answers from CBS News Minnesota reporter Susan Elizabeth Littlefield.
It's a holiday we know is coming. So why the rush?
I probably should have got some of these gifts earlier.
I'm also shopping for Christmas gifts, but I actually got sidetracked and I've been shopping for myself.
There are a lot of reasons to get distracted this time of year and to
procrastinate.
Are you a procrastinator or planner?
I'm for sure a procrastinator.
Amitai Shanab happens to be a published expert on this subject, and not just from personal experience. He's a professor at UC Berkeley.
In its traditional definition, procrastination literally means to put something off until later, to put something off till tomorrow. Were you able to persist in your willpower and kind of stick with a task in the face of temptation? And some of them define it more in terms of just whether you were able to get a task started early or whether you started it closer to a deadline.
Prime procrastination scenarios: shopping, studying, filing taxes.
I sit in a lot of thought for a long time.
Are we by nature procrastinators versus planners?
My understanding is that there is a genetic element to who ends up being procrastinator, more or less of a procrastinator. And one reason for that is that there are differences between people in how impulsive they are.
He says planning can also be learned. Say a parent is in the military. Their kid may learn preparation young. But for most of us,
people, by and large, tend to procrastinate.
He referenced a large-scale study that shows 75% of college students say they procrastinate, data that matched our real-time research at Mall of America. Planner or procrastinator?
Procrastinator.
I'm more of a procrastinator.
I'm definitely a procrastinator. I don't like planning.
I need everything on time.
So you're a planner?
Yes, exactly. Plan everything.
This is not something that you are good or bad at, that is completing tasks or not. It represents this confluence of how you're representing the importance of things in your environment.
He says planning can be learned, so there's no time to waste.
Whew, preparation's perfect.
Susan Elizabeth Littlefield, WCCO News.
All right, a father in Houston is desperately pleading to be reunited with his wife and newborn twins after they were deported to Mexico last week. We'll hear from the family next. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. Got some breaking news. The House Ethics Committee has voted to release the Matt Gaetz report. You'll remember this was a contentious issue when Gaetz was Trump's pick for Attorney General. I want to bring back CBS News political reporter Torian Small for more on what he's learning about all this. So what can you tell us, Torian, about the decision and the timing of when this report may actually drop?
Well, Vlad, two sources familiar with the matter confirmed that the House Ethics Committee has voted, this panel has voted to release this ethics investigation, the details in a report on Matt Gaetz. But we know that that likely won't happen until after the final votes of the 118th Congress happen. So this will likely be well before the new Congress comes in. Why this is so significant, though, is this is a pretty big reversal from Republican stances, especially at the top. House Speaker Mike Johnson said that this will break precedent and that this kind of serves as a safeguard for members who do things that are eligible for ethics investigations. So the fact that this panel has secretly decided to release the report could mean that the content of this is significant enough, but also would be another hit to Mike Johnson's influence. He's pretty unpopular among some Freedom Caucus members as well as some members on the right about the negotiations and then the ultimate release of this continuing resolution. So this is another hit against him and his influence on the Hill. Again, we likely won't see the report until after the final votes are made in the 118th Congress, but still it's could be damning for the former AG pick, Donald Trump AG pick, who ultimately dropped out because of the controversy surrounding this, Vlad.
All right, Torian Small with that breaking news for us on the Hill. Thanks for rejoining us, Torian. Appreciate it. Okay, to the economy now. The Federal Reserve will issue its final interest rate decision of 2024 this afternoon, and economists predict a third consecutive cut, but warn that the pace of cuts will slow in the new year. CBS News Money Watch correspondent Kelly O'Grady joins me now for more. So Kelly, some economists say now is not the time for a cut. What are you hearing?
So they're saying that because inflation has been ticking up. Remember, the Fed's target rate is 2% for inflation. And you and I stood on your set last week and talked about how consumer prices have ticked up for 2 months in a row. Producer prices have ticked up for 2 months in a row. And so economists are looking at this and saying, OK, you couple that with the fact that the job market is cooling but still relatively strong, and the economic data is not necessarily making the case for a cut. I actually spoke to two former Fed officials yesterday, and both of them said that they would vote for a pause. So really, we're going to get a little bit more information today from Powell during the presser, but the market is pricing in an over 90% chance, Vlad, of a quarter-point cut right now.
Wow. And you know we love having you on set here at Studio 55, but you just mentioned the reason why you are in Washington, D.C. today, that press conference that Jerome Powell is scheduled to hold. What do you want to hear from him?
I want to hear why. If he does indeed cut, if the Fed does cut, I want to understand what in the economic data tells him that we should get a quarter-point cut right now, because you also mentioned in the intro that we're expecting to hear that they're going to slow the number of cuts that we were expecting to get in 2025. We were expecting to get 4. Now we're expecting to get less. We're expecting them to say that today. So what is it that says, yes, let's cut now, but the data is telling them that things aren't in a good enough position that we can still have the original rate cutting strategy? I think that's really the dynamic that I want to hear him explain, Vlad.
Yeah, we'll be looking for your reporting afterwards. Kelly, thank you very much as always, my friend. Okay, a Texas man is looking for help from lawmakers after his wife and children were detained and then deported to Mexico right before his eyes. Federico Arellano Jr. says he was threatened with arrest when he tried to speak with the ICE agents who detained his family. That includes twin girls who were born here in the United States in September. CBS News correspondent Skylar Henry is following this story from us, and he joins us from Houston to talk more about it. So, Skylar, I just want to put a fine point on it, just to remind our audience that 2 of those children that were deported are United States citizens. And there are, as you know, millions of Americans in this country who are part of these mixed families. So tell us exactly how that happened, how 2 U.S. citizens were deported.
Well, that's a question that legal attorneys here, Vlad, say that they have for anyone who will listen. It really caught Arellano, his wife, Cristina Salazar, and others by surprise. They were told to go to the ICE field office here in Houston to discuss her case because she missed an important immigration court date back in October. The reason why she missed it wasn't because she chose to do so and said, forget about it, was because Doctors told her that she needed to recover at home because 26 days earlier, she had an emergency C-section where she gave birth to those twins. Now, those twins, their couple's 7-year-old daughter, as well as their 2-year-old son, are all in Reynosa, Mexico. It is a very complicated situation. We spoke with the attorneys about how something like this could happen. They called it a gap in communication and something that they felt as if could be resolved in court. But instead, the judge ordered the removal, and everything sort of trickled on from there. We were able to speak with Arellano yesterday, as well as Reynosa. Arellano told me that he is heartbroken at the fact that he is not able to be with his family. He also said that he was completely caught off guard by the discussion, quote unquote, when he went to the ICE field office. He said that he reached out to the court, explained the situation with his wife, and they told him that they were able to reschedule to figure out another court date, and that they would get back to him whenever they had a future date set. Now, obviously, that did not happen, and that's ultimately what led to what we have now. We were able to speak with Salazar, who is in Reynosa, via video chat. She described the conditions there, but also stressed and expressed her concerns, Vlad, about how it is incredibly difficult to get the necessary medicine that she needs in order to take care of those 2 children. Remember, they are preemies after all, and now described that she is concerned about not only getting money to her, but whether she'll be able to get back into the country.
Christina, where's your head at right now?
We are separated. I'm alone. I have no one to help me with my kids here, and they are really sick.
All right, Skylar Henry for us. What a terrible story. Hoping that there's some resolve for that family. No United States citizen should be deported under any circumstances because they are citizens of this country with all of the rights therein as protected under the Constitution of this country. We appreciate it, Skylar. Thank you. Let's bring in CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Kate Bilo with another look at the national forecast. Hey, Kate.
Hey, Vlad, good morning. We've got some interesting weather to talk about heading into the weekend. Winter officially begins on Saturday, and it is going to feel like it across much of the country. But for today, we are nice and warm, at least for one more day across the east. But there is a line of rain, which is pushing through portions of the Midwest and the Great Lakes states, right on down into the Deep South as well. And this is going to be moving into spots like New York City, Philadelphia, Boston, just in time for this evening. Behind it, we've got kind of a 1-2 push of Arctic air that will be moving into portions of the northern plains and then spreading eastward just in time for the early days of winter. So let's take a look at your forecast. We'll start off with just a look across the nation today. And again, we're going to be looking at temperatures really starting to rise across the south. Down in Miami today, we're looking at temperatures in the 80s. We'll start off north and east again with some rain moving in. Tampa at 81 degrees today with the chance for a thunderstorm. Now, Atlanta, you're going to see this line of thunderstorms moving in later on today. Out ahead of it, 71. But you can start to see the cold pushing in across the northern plains. The high in Minneapolis today, just 25. Chicago's at 35, and we're at 46 degrees in St. Louis. Still have rain and mountain snow across the west, although it is starting to taper a bit. Spokane, Washington at 48 degrees today. And as we head down south, that high fire danger in Southern California. Once again, critical fire weather near Los Angeles and Malibu, where it's 80 degrees today. Santa Ana winds really heating things up and very low relative humidity there. So again, critical fire weather across portions of Southern California, especially in the area where the Franklin fire is still burning. We can expect more fire spread and more fires to develop with these Santa Ana winds, again, 30 to 40, maybe even 50 miles per hour in spots as we go through the day. And here's that blast of cold just in time for the weekend. It is going to be bitter across much of the Northeast, Vlad. I'll send it back over to you.
All right, Kate, thank you very much. Appreciate it. The 2 astronauts stuck in space thought maybe they'd be home for Christmas. Now they'll be lucky to be back by spring. Why NASA once again delayed the Starliner's return to Earth. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. Here's a look at some of the top stories we're following. In Hawaii, dozens of drivers watched as a small plane crashed near Honolulu's airport. The cargo plane was on a training flight when the pilot reported it being out of control. It crashed into an abandoned building near the airport a short time later, killing both people on board. The NTSB is now investigating the cause of the crash. In California, a jury found tech consultant Nima Momeni guilty of second-degree murder in the killing of Cash App founder Bob Lee. The jury delivered the verdict yesterday after 7 days of deliberation. The panel rejected a first-degree murder charge. Momeni now faces 16 years to life in prison. And in Maryland, police in suburban Baltimore are investigating a mass shooting that left one person dead and sent at least 9 others to the hospital. It happened in Towson, just outside the city limits. Officials say it appears to have been a targeted incident and believe that there is no further threat to the public. Two astronauts who've been stuck in space since June will have to wait even longer to get home. This morning, NASA once again pushed back the return date until the end of March at the very earliest. Joining me now is the chief astronomer from the Franklin Institute, Derek Pitts. Derek, this is such a, I feel, for these astronauts who were only there for like a week-long mission, and now it's likely they're not getting back until the spring. Why is it taking so long?
Good morning, Vlad. The reason why it's taking so long is because NASA has decided to add another SpaceX Dragon capsule to its available fleet of capsules for astronauts headed up to space station or coming back. And so that delay from February until late March then delays the return of Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams back to Earth to no earlier than late March, more likely early April.
Wow. So I mean, clearly these space stations are meant for long-term stays. My guess is that the astronauts have everything that they need, and of course they train for situations just like this.
Yes, they certainly do. And, the other thing we have to remember is that, like you said, Vlad, all the supplies they need are there. There's no problem with any of the resources or anything like that. But they were only supposed to really be at space station for 10 days. So they've had that extended to what's going to be around 9 months. And rather than thinking of them as stranded, they get to be, in a sense, on an extended adventure. And since they were not slated to be in space for this long, they're actually having a wonderful time because this could be a long time before their next trip to space, and they weren't expecting to stay this long. So I think they're having a good time.
And so remind our viewers how this all began. You mentioned that they were only there, supposed to be there for a week. What happened?
What happened was there was a test flight of a Boeing Starliner capsule that's meant to be integrated into the SLS launch system and into the Artemis missions out to the moon. But when the Starliner got to International Space Station, there were some problems with reaction control thrusters on board the craft, and they were worried that trying to re-enter with astronauts on board with reaction control system thrusters that weren't working properly, that could cause some problems. There could be some risk. And NASA decided that the risk was far too high to jeopardize the lives of astronauts. So instead, they figured, let's leave the astronauts on board space station. We'll bring them back on board a tested Falcon Dragon, Crew Dragon spacecraft, and we'll just bring the Starliner back empty. Then we can go back and we can test all those thrusters and make sure those systems are working properly for future missions.
Wow. All right, Derek Pitts, always great to have you in situations like this to discuss, my friend. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Vlad.
Okay, still ahead, why Tom Cruise is being honored by the United States Navy. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. The United States Navy is honoring Tom Cruise for the role that harnessed his, quote, need for speed. The Top Gun and Maverick star was presented with the Navy's highest civilian honor, the Distinguished Public Service Award, citing his outstanding contributions in promoting the military. The Navy says both Top Gun films became a successful recruiting tool for all branches of the United States military. Okay, 1 million Americans are diagnosed with a life-threatening neurological condition that leads to a lot of brain surgeries for babies that are born with it. CBS News Texas reporter Mike Kinney introduces us to one boy who is part prodigy and part miracle.
This is Rory McElroy.
This is Scotty Scheffler.
Golf is everything for Duke Birtwistle.
This is Tiger Woods, and this is Duke Calloway.
That's you.
Yeah, that's me.
The little 5-year-old from North Texas has big dreams for his future. He's not shy about sharing them.
I want to be a pro and be on TV, like I am right now.
There's another good one.
His mom, Emily Birtwistle, says Duke's love of golf is a natural-born talent.
No one in our family had ever golfed. Like anyone, extended family, nobody had. He's never had lessons. He's all natural, taught, self-taught.
The self-taught prodigy is a typical curious kindergartner, and he just so happens to have a fitting name for the sport.
And ironically, his middle name is Calloway.
Duke has competed in tournaments since he was 3, earning the nickname the Duke of Clubs after hitting this hole-in-one.
Nice shot!
He was just 3.5 at the time.
This is my hole-in-one ball. This is my scorecard right there, and this is me for my hole-in-one picture.
A picture doctors said would never happen. Duke was born premature. At 1 week old, they found a brain bleed on his left side. A week later, another on the other side. Each week brought more bad news. Week 3, an ultrasound revealed a life-changing diagnosis.
We were told when we were given that hydrocephalus diagnosis as well that he would never walk, talk, or breathe on his own. And so most parents expect more brain surgeries than birthdays with their kids.
Hydrocephalus is a buildup of spinal fluid on the brain. It creates pressure that can cause neurological and physical issues that usually require surgery.
But Duke is our, one-in-a-lifetime miracle.
A miracle more rare than a hole-in-one.
Duke does not have a shunt, and he never had a reservoir tapping as an infant, which is another way to drain fluid, and he has no comorbid diagnoses. He has no neurological diagnoses, no motor physical diagnoses, no social emotional diagnoses. He has no diagnoses related to his brain bleeds either. He's a walking, talking miracle.
Swing through, baby. There you go.
Golf has been such a huge piece of his therapy journey in a way that I didn't realize that's what it was doing. And the more I thought about it and watched it happen and watched him grow because of it, and how much of especially that 95% chance of him being paralyzed on his left side, and then he's a left-handed golfer. It's hard to not just sit there and go, how?
Can I go for another hole? Golf is pretty amazing for me. I can hit it really far, and that makes me healthy.
The Duke of Clubs keeps on swinging and dreaming of the pros.
Oh, come on. Yeah!
Mike Kinney, CBS News, Texas.
Good job, buddy.
What a beautiful story from Mike Kinney there in Texas. We appreciate it. All right, let's bring in CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Kate Bilo with the last look at the national forecast. Hey, Kate.
Hey, Vlad. Yeah, what a heartwarming story that he is adorable and doing amazing things. Let's talk about your forecast for today. Nothing all that amazing to talk about weather-wise. We do have enhanced fire danger across parts of the Southwest, especially Southern California and areas where the Franklin fire continues to burn. Now we have the Soto fire to be worried about. We'll show you that in just a moment. We also have a line of rain and thunder moving into the deep south, and this is going to produce rain for the major Northeast cities just in time for the evening commute. Perhaps some snow in higher elevations across New England. And by the weekend, we're going to be ushering a blast of cold in across much of the eastern half of the country, even as the west heats back up. So showers today expected across the deep south, across the northeast, dry conditions across much of the southwest, but that high fire danger down around Los Angeles, Malibu, temperatures near 80 degrees in Los Angeles today as those Santa Ana winds continue to roar. In fact, you can see critical fire danger near the Franklin fire. There's that new Soto fire near San Bernardino. And again, that could be expected to spread with the winds really accelerating through the valleys and canyons today. As we head into the weekend, look at this cold moving in across the east. By Sunday, we have highs in the 20s in New York City, 14 degrees below average, but we're starting to heat up out west, and it's going to stay warm into the Christmas holiday. Vlad, back over to you.
All right, Kate, thank you very much. Appreciate it. That does it for me, folks, but stay right where you are. After the break, Elizabeth Cook is live from San Francisco with all the news breaking from coast to coast. This is CBS News 24/7.